Ladies and gentlemen, I warmly welcome you all to the session, Pakistan's Relations with Western African Countries. This session is a part of the 5-series program titled Reviving the Past, Pakistan's Relations with African Countries. The series focuses on Pakistan's relations with 5 geographical regions of Africa and is being organized by IPS under its Understanding Africa program. To tell you more about the program, it envisages to build an in-depth knowledge and multidisciplinary study on African countries and to revive Pakistan's relations with African countries in the 21st century. To give you more detail about this session will be chaired by Ambassador Tajamul Altaf Sahab, who is Senior Fellow at IPS, and the speaker of this session is Ambassador Haroon Shaukat Sahab. I hand the session to Ambassador Tajamul Altaf Sahab.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Let me begin by welcoming Ambassador Muhammad Haroon Shaukat on behalf of Mr. Khalid Rahman, Chairman, Institute of Policy Studies, and my own behalf, and IPS team to joining us in this webinar on Pakistan's relations with Western African countries, with special focus on 2 areas. One, of course, one of the postings of Ambassador Haroon Shaukat Sahib to Niger, Niamey, and another UN special assignment to Sierra Leone. That will be, of course, the base point, and from there, Ambassador Sahib can take us to the different dimensions of his area of interest. That will be great honor for everyone present here in this room. Let me also put it for the information of Ambassador Haroon Shaukat Sahib that our chairman Khalid Rahman Sahib was very keen to join us in this session and chair this session, but of course because of a pressing engagement right now he is attending another engagement, and there is a possibility that he may also join us on Zoom. And if that is not possible in the beginning, of course at a later part, or if he finishes that event before we finish this one, he may also physically join us in the session. Sir, it is my unique honor and privilege to introduce you to the IPS team so that I can set the ground for your conversation, for your talk on the topic. And this is for information of our researchers and senior fellows at IPS, that Ambassador Muhammad Haroon Shaukat Sahib is from 5th Common Training Program of 1978 batch, a very senior, veteran, seasoned and experienced diplomat. Over to you, sir. Thank you.
But allow me first of all to thank the management of the Institute of Policy Studies, especially your president, Mr. Khalid Rahman, my very dear friend, Ambassador Abrar, you yourself, and the Ambassador Saqib, who has just joined us. As I mentioned, you see, this is a very interesting subject that you started, this 5 series on Pakistan's relations with Africa. I understand that sometime back the Foreign Office carried out an envoys conference, a pretty detailed one. I also understand that Institute of Strategic Studies carried out a detailed study, very detailed study on Pakistan's relations with Africa. And I think the initiative of Institute of Policy Studies is both timely and important. Because Africa is a huge market. It's a group of 54 countries, developing world, with whom Pakistan has stood by very closely all along. My two exposures in Africa were first Niamey, March 1995 to August 1996. I was sent there as chargé d'affaires on permanent basis. But during my stay, an ambassador was appointed, and then I was moved to Saudi Arabia. My second exposure was to UNIMCIL in the peacekeeping mission in Sierra Leone. I was part of a international staff of the United Nations. We had a very large Pakistani contingent there, and I was the only political officer to liaise with the management. So I plan to talk very briefly on the broader picture of Africa first. Then I will briefly cover West Africa, and then my experience in Niger and Sierra Leone. And then I will briefly touch upon the challenges and the way forward. Now, Africa, as we all know, is a continent, second largest continent, 1.3 billion people, 54 states, $2.3 billion GDP, holds very special importance for Pakistan. And Pakistan's engagement with Africa is long-standing. Our relations with Africa have been traditionally marked by warmth, cordiality, mutual trust, and understanding. We have shared common aspirations and common concerns. Historically, Pakistan has supported both morally and materially the freedom movements in Africa. To name some, for example, Algeria, Kenya, Sudan, Zimbabwe, South Africa, Morocco, Libya, Egypt, and Nigeria were supported by us in their independence struggles. And our support to these countries in their freedom struggles have won us a lot of goodwill. And this goodwill continues to this day. Then there is another aspect. There is the aspect of our armed forces participating in a number of UN peacekeeping missions in Africa. This has fortified Pakistan's goodwill with Africa. Pakistan has participated, among others, in Congo in 1960. Our peacekeeping started with the first contingent participating in Congo in 1960. Then Somalia, Rwanda, Sierra Leone, where I was also a participant, Central Asian Republic, South Sudan, Western Sahara, and Mali, etc. We have also very close coordination with African countries, with the African group in the multilateral forum, especially United Nations, be it non-aligned movement, be it Group of 77, be it OIC. And in fact, in most international forums, our concerns and our aspirations have been very similar. So we have shared common views on political issues, arms control issues, disarmament, sustainable development, human rights, environment-related issues. We have had very close cooperation on the African countries in the United Nations General Assembly, its committees, human rights forums, and other international bodies that I mentioned. Then our ties with African continent have registered a steady growth. Africa is now emerging as a big market. Our armed forces have played a significant role in marketing our defense products. Nigeria, as we know, is now a buyer of Pakistan's Super Bashar and the Thunder aircraft, which is a great sort of move forward. Pakistan has also commenced institutional arrangement with African Union. Pakistan's trade with the African countries reached $4.18 billion in the last financial year, 2019 19 and 20, and which apparently registered 7% growth. I also understand, my figures may be wrong, that we have 15 resident missions in Africa with concurrent accreditation to another 39, while 11 African countries have their missions in Pakistan. Now, Africa today has become focus of the entire world. World Bank expects that most African countries would reach middle income status by 2025. Africa's rich natural resources, vast import market, strong economic growth pattern in certain years, and new continent-wide framework of free trade offer unique opportunities. Today, Africa is more united and well-focused on development. The African Unity, which was launched in African Union, which was launched in 2002 in South Africa. Hello, sorry. Officially launched in July 2002 in South Africa, followed a decision by its predecessor OAU to create a new continental organization to build on its work. The focus of OAU, as we all know, was decolonization and fight against apartheid, etc. But the African Union is now focused on growth and economic development. And a major development in this regard, which must catch the attention of everybody here in Pakistan, is the foundation of African Continental Free Trade Agreement, which was concluded in March 2018, which was supposed to have become operational on 1st January 2021. Now, we do not have great data on this, how far this continent-wide free trade agreement has taken root. But this framework now exists, and this offers an enormous scope to treat Africa as a big market. We need to seek proactive approach in seeking closer economic, social, and cultural cooperation with South African nations, and in all fields, in fact. Now, this is a broader picture of Africa. I'm sure all the experts here sitting know it very well. But the transition of Africa from OAU to European to African Union, and the conclusion of a free trade agreement, which is continent-wide, is an excellent platform to build upon our relations. Now, if you allow, I tried to collect some information which is publicly available. In this group of countries, there's one giant called Nigeria, which has a GDP of over $450 billion, and which has a population nearing the population of Pakistan. It is 206 million population. It's a predominantly Anglophone country, and I've also made a column of, I just picked these 11 countries because there are others which are very small and not too significant in terms of their size and their size of their GDP. You can see that other than Nigeria and Ghana, and in the last Sierra Leone, all countries are Francophone. And in the Francophone countries, there are three countries which stand out. One is Côte d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast. It has a population of 22 million and a GDP of $61 billion. Then we have Senegal, 24 billion GDP and 14 million population. Niger is 13 billion GDP and 17 million population. The rest, as you see, are very small economies, small populations. Most of these countries, with the exception of Ghana, are members of the OIC, which is a very important element for us while considering Western Africa as a regional unit. In terms of our diplomatic presence, we have an embassy in Nigeria, which probably there is another consulate also now in Lagos. The embassy some time back was moved from Lagos to Abuja. Ghana was a long time a resident mission of Pakistan, but was closed, I think, because of economy considerations. Senegal, we still have an embassy, and Niger, we still have an embassy. In Mauritania, in the early 80s, there used to be an embassy in Nouakchott. I don't think if we ever set up an embassy there again. Now, I could be wrong in these numbers, but this is what I gathered. We are no longer on the information highway of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Since we are no longer on the information highway of the Foreign Ministry, our figures could be, here and there. Now, my point in showing you these two slides was to understand the nature of the Western Africa. Western Africa. Now, also the Francophone countries in this part. There is a economic community called Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS. It's a regional political and economic union following 15 countries. Let me read out the names: Benin, Burkina Faso, Cape Verde, now right, Cabo Verde, Cote d'Ivoire, Gambia, Ghana, Guinea-Bissau, Liberia, and Mali. Now, Mali, then Niger, Nigeria, Senegal, Sierra Leone, and Togo. ECOWAS was established in 1975, and its vision was revised in 1993 in Benin, in Cotonou. ECOWAS also has, apart from political and economic functions, it also is a troop contributing region for the peacekeeping operations within Africa. Then within part of this ECOWAS, there is a West African Economic Monetary Union. There's a very interesting currency called franc CFA. Those who have served in Africa would know this. This is a common currency in a number of, in 8 French-speaking countries. It was established in 1994, and it is called CFA in English, and CFA in French, franc, which is pegged to euro. In this part of the world, there used to be an airline also, which is called Air Afrique, I think, which has gone bankrupt, if I'm not wrong now. This was a common airline owned by the members of this region. Now, this is an overview of the West African region. Now, let me come down to Niger now, where I served for about a year and a half. Niger is a landlocked, sub-Saharan, predominantly Muslim country, whose economy centers on subsistence crops, livestock, and some of the world's largest uranium deposits. Niger is one of the poorest countries in the world, and very little services. It is ranked amongst the last in the United Nations Human Development Index. And in recent years, I understand that its economy has been affected by terrorist activities in the bordering Mali and Difa region. I mentioned that it has a population of 23 million people and $13 billion worth of GDP. Niamey has had, there was, I have spent about a year and a half, and at that time, the Niamey was under a political government. in January 27, 1996, a coup took place. And the coup maker was Colonel Ibrahim Bare. And he ousted the first democratically elected president, Mahaman Usman, who remained in power for nearly 3 years. And his prime minister, Hama Amadou, and a number of other members of the cabinet were arrested. And Colonel Bare himself elevated himself to the level of a general in few days. And it's a coincidence that just before this coup took place, a new ambassador had been appointed to, it was a mission at permanent charge d'affaires level, but it was upgraded to the level of an ambassador, and a political ambassador, Mr. Jalaluddin, was appointed there. He had just come. He had not presented his credentials. And this coup took place, and that gentleman was a very simple man, and I knew the language, so I was his liaison with the leadership. And when the coup took place, he called on the Mr. Bare, Colonel Bare, and he said, "I planned the coup sitting in your house over dinner last night." So that was, it was a very strange thing, because there were a few commanders it was a small army, but they were sitting at the Pakistani ambassador's residence having food, and they planned that tomorrow they're going to turn the switch and take over. And he very proudly demonstrated his uniform. He said, "This is from Pakistan." And he demonstrated a number of his, personal elements of uniform, that I got these from Pakistan. Anyway, tragically enough, Mahaman Usman was supposed to be Mahaman Usman, the president ousted, was supposed to be one of the chief guests at the 23rd March ceremonies in Pakistan. And that didn't happen. That could not happen. Anyway, the long and short is that this coup was then, General Bare was killed in a counter coup in 1999. Currently, there is a politically elected president and a prime minister in Niger. Now, the question is, why is Niger important for Pakistan? I would say there are three main reasons. First of all, it's an important sub-Saharan, predominantly Muslim country. And they're very good Muslims. They're very simple people. They truly are good Muslims. Most importantly, Niger has always been part of OIC's contact group on Jammu and Kashmir. And this is a very small group, working contact group, in which we have 4 other countries. But Niger has consistently supported Pakistan unequivocally on the issue of Jammu and Kashmir. And one of the main considerations when we established our embassy there was the riches of Niger in uranium. This you don't find in any brief, you don't find it in any files, but it is believed that when our nuclear program started, there was a small consignment of what is called yellow cake from Niger to Pakistan, which was used in the initial stages of the EQ Khan ventures. I do not think that we import any uranium these days. We have, I think, enough. Currently in Pakistan, we mine our own uranium from Pakistan. But with Niger, we also had a 4th element, which was, only for a short period, about 6-7 years. The Secretary General of OIC, Hamid Al-Ghabid. He remained in office from 1989 to 1996. Now, Pakistan has had always, I think even in the worst of times, I may be wrong, but I think we have never closed down our embassy. We have had about more than 40 years of our embassy in Niger. And these are the main considerations why we are there. The contact group on Jammu and Kashmir includes Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Azerbaijan, and Turkey. So this is, a very small group, and Niger has never blinked. We have not had great, trade relations. We have met Nigerian leadership in third countries like New York when there is a General Assembly session or there's an international meeting. I think the last presidential visit took place back in 1984 when the then President Tanja visited Pakistan. I don't think that any of our head of state or head of government has ever gone to Niger, but Pakistan's foreign minister recently attended 47th session of the Council of Foreign Ministers of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, which was held in Niamey in November 2020. I think that is probably the last high-level visit. This is an important country. There's no doubt it has a great deal of value for Pakistan, and we should continue to. We have endeavored to train a number of their officers in diplomatic academy, in the military, in banking, and we've tried to. The one favor that we've been doing to Niger is that we have been providing them fairly large-scale food assistance in terms of 15,000 ton rice. I think the last such consignment went somewhere back in 2016. I do not know the figures now, but it used to be a fairly regular feature. They used to ask us because Niger is often, plagued with droughts and lack of ability to grow enough food for themselves. This is roughly my overview of Niger. Now coming to Sierra Leone. Sierra Leone is a very small country in West Africa. It is again 78% Muslim population, about 6.6 million people, GDP around 4 billion. It got independence in 1961. It was under the British influence. It went through a very terrible civil war from 1999 to 1991 to 2002. How did Pakistan get involved? I think this is concurrently accredited to our embassy in Senegal. I do not know the current state, but when I was in UNAMSIL in Sierra Leone, it was accredited from Senegal. How did Pakistan end up in Sierra Leone with a large troop contingent? In the late 90s, Pakistan was facing one of those phases of diplomatic isolation. The uprising in Kashmir was at its peak at that time, the first phase. The relations with the United States were tense. This was a large mission, a very tricky situation where RFU, the Revolutionary Front, Liberation Front in Sierra Leone had created havoc in the country. Sierra Leone is very rich in diamonds. Many of you may have seen the film Blood Diamonds. That's about Sierra Leone. They were intoxicating young kids with the ammunition. They would take out the bullet ammunition and feed it to young kids and then make them kill their parents. And then they became so savage that they would say, do you want a short sleeve or you want a full sleeve? So they will either cut the arm from the top or from the if you go to Sierra Leone, it's a very terrible sight that these people are very able-bodied, very fit people, but a lot of them have a limb gone. It was a very terrible civil war. Indians had a large contingent there, and India withdrew. India had troubles in this mission, they withdrew. So the reputation of the United Nations was at stake, that if United Nations fails in Sierra Leone, United Nations peacekeeping missions will come under serious question. So the United Nations Secretary General requested Pakistan. The US Secretary of State requested our foreign minister, then foreign minister, that please send your troops. So I was at that stage in the foreign ministry as dealing with United Nations. So I knew the whole process through which our participation was ensured. So our GHQ sent a mission, advanced mission, which comprised of then Brigadier Ahmed Shuja Pasha, who later on became the Director General ISI, with one of our directors, Mr. Shami, who also he's a current ambassador of Pakistan. They visited, they surveyed the whole situation, and they submitted on the way back, they submitted their report to the GHQ. And the GHQ thought that it's an opportunity to build bridges with the United Nations, with the United States. Let's go do it. So they decided to send a very robust contingent. It was one of the largest Pakistani contingent of 4,500 troops. Our government demanded a leading military post. They gave us Chief Military Observer, and General Athar Ali, who was later Corps Commander Karachi and later on Defense Secretary, was at that stage Major General. He was nominated as Chief Military Observer. And General Shuja Pasha, who at that stage was Brigadier Pasha, was the brigade commander. And I was given the task of Special Assistant to the Deputy Secretary General to liaise between the military and the civilian side. Our people were keen that we should have a voice and ears in the UNAMCIL hierarchy so that our troops don't come into the harm's way. It was a great success. Pakistanis carried out their job with great distinction. We had a very self-contained contingent. It even had full aviation division, 3 types of helicopters, and they were on their own. They went with this intention that should they come into harm's way, they should not depend upon any third country to save them. But they took over the most troubled spot of Sierra Leone in a very not firing a bullet, not killing anybody, not suffering any casualties. But they held on, and they created not only when Koidu was the area where the headquarters was built. If you landed in the helicopter, you could not see any house with the roof intact. And by the time I left the place, it was a bustling city. So the Pakistani contingent carried out a very successful mission. It brought very good name to Pakistan's efforts. This contribution was recognized by the United Nations Secretary General, the US administration, and we managed to also replenish some of our equipment because we had sent large number of military equipment on wet lease basis. So we never had a mission in Sierra Leone. They insisted to have a mission in Sierra Leone, but as you know, we all understand that we have serious issues of budgetary constraints, and it was never established. I think even today it is looked after from Senegal. Now, the largest country in the Western Africa region remains Nigeria, where I have no personal experience, but I do understand that our bilateral trade has been close to 500 million. And although the balance of trade is tilted in favor of Nigeria, we still have a wide variety of things that we are sending to them. And the most important breakthrough is that we have been able to sell our Super Mushak aircraft and JF-17 Thunder aircraft to Nigeria. This is my overview of Africa. Then Western Africa and these two countries. If we come to the challenges, can I come to the challenges? Now, challenges, I think the most of our challenges emanate from, stem from our domestic weaknesses. We have a weak and cash-strapped economy. We have a narrow base of industrial exportable goods. We have very few resident missions in Africa. We still rely on, crops like rice, which still constitute a bulk of our exports to Africa. Then we are Africa's competitors in things like textiles. We do not have very good air or sea connections with African countries. Our airline hardly goes to any destination, one or two in Africa. With there are no Pakistani sea liners, freight liners going to Africa. There has been a lack of priority. Let's admit it. In the past, Africa was not on your radar screen. It is true, if we all speak frankly, we have been, our security concerns have always dominated Pakistan's foreign policy. We start with Kashmir and we end up with Afghanistan. This is the discourse with most of the political leadership. Economic diplomacy has not been our forte. It has not been a priority. I have seen that priority in a country where I served as an ambassador. Let me give you the example of Turkey. Let me share an anecdote with you. I was a special secretary in the foreign ministry. I went with a prime minister's visit to Turkey. And there was a tete-a-tete, the one-on-one meeting between the two prime ministers. And there was a huge crowd of photographers and, thronging the place. And someone held me from my arm and pushed me into the room. It was our then ambassador. He said, Harun, go and take the minutes of this meeting. So I said, okay. On the other side, there was only one gentleman with the Turkish then Prime Minister, Erdogan Saab, Mr. Jamil Çiçek, who was later on their chairman of the Senate, Speaker of the National Assembly. They call it Grand National Assembly. You'll be surprised. The first thing the president asked our prime minister, he said, my brother, tell me how many weekly flights you have from Emirates, how many weekly flights you have from Qatar Airways, how many weekly flights you have from blah, blah, blah. And he said, and how many flights from the Turkish Airways? Only 2 in a week. Today, Turkish Airlines has almost as many flights to Pakistan as the Emirates and the Qatar. That is what economic diplomacy means. With all their political issues in place, this is a practical example I'm giving you of how political leadership steers and pushes their way through into their economic interests. They place it, in the year 2013, I think, or 2012. I was ambassador in Turkey. We first time crossed the exports of $1 billion to Turkey. And $700 million exports were of textile related, fabric or textiles or made-ups. The Turks imposed a 25% safeguard duty on these goods. After that, we tried every level best to have it removed from a very brotherly country. They did not. They did not budge. On the economic interest, they did not budge. Now, what I'm basically trying to say is that what is our own economic interest is for us to determine. And it is for us to safeguard. And it is for us to promote. Nobody else is going to come and do it for us. So I think the challenges are of that nature. If you are only producing textile is 60% of your production line, what are you going to sell? You come back, you come down to rice and those things. First of all, you need a broad exportable surplus for you to then take a bigger niche into these markets. We always complain about lack of footprint, very small embassies, very few embassies in Africa. That is true. But what can the government do? Look at the state of the government it has been in the last several years in Pakistan. When there are such severe constraints on your cash flow, then these things obviously get tightened. In 1980s, Turkey was like Pakistan. Our GDP and Turkish GDP was the same. Today, they are $1 trillion economy. They are 16th, 17th largest economy in the world. Their foreign service, their population is less than half of Pakistan. I think it's about 80 million. We are 220 million. They have about 3 times the diplomatic presence. Their airline, the Turkish Airlines used to be called They Hate You, THY, Turkish Türk Hava Yolları. Today, it competes with Qatar, it competes with Emirates, it probably goes to more destinations in the world than any other airlines. That is how you create your footprint. That is how you, once I remember the Turkish Prime Minister, at that stage, he was the Foreign Minister, Mr. Ahmed Davutoglu. He said, when I go to a third country, then for the first time, I first see the air traffic and the number of the size of the airports. And that tells me the state of the economy. If you stand by the runway of the Lahore airport, you'll probably have 6 flights coming in a whole bloody day, and 5 of them will be domestic. So the thing is that we have lot to repair and lot to build before we can claim a big share. Now, let me go to the formality of recommendations now. Can I?
Yes, sir.
First of all, I would, being a career diplomat, I would strongly say that you cannot expect to create any big waves in a new area unless you have a strong diplomatic presence. I think austerity or no austerity, you have to have bigger diplomatic footprint in these countries. You can plan. If you're tight today, you can say in the next 5 years we will have X number of diplomatic missions in this and this place. But this must be done. And then, most importantly, as I gave the example of the Turkish economic diplomacy has to take center stage. Security is important. It is vital. We all agree. But without your economic security, without human security, you are nowhere. Pakistan has to accord very special priority economic diplomacy with special focus on domestic production, then promotion of exports, trade and investment. I will make some recommendations which are a bit not very conventional. The time has come for a country like Pakistan. We are the 7th nuclear power in the world. We are 220 million people. Even in this stage, we have a GDP of clearly over $350 billion and as much in informal economy. It is close to about $700 million if you take account of the informal economy. We must have a small Pakistan Exim Bank to finance exports of Pakistani goods to wherever, including Africa, especially Africa, because African countries, smaller countries, cannot afford to finance exports. Also, we need to develop a development agency of Pakistan, small development agency of Pakistan, give them a small seed money budget, but let it handle the assistance programs. We used to have an Africa fund in the Foreign Office. It was a scattered, dispersed fund which was used as things went. If you got a request from some country that train X number of diplomats, we said, okay, fine. Train X number of bankers, we would say, okay, fine. But I think there has to be method in the madness. You should have a small development agency of Pakistan. Let it start with a small budget, but let it have an overall picture. Let it have its priorities right to chew whatever it can digest and to put to invest and put money where they expect good returns. Also, there is a need for Pakistani private sector to now develop into multinational companies. We don't have such companies. We have Mansha Group, which on paper is about $2.5 billion worth. You have FWO, which has actually become a little bit of a multinational. Now, such groups can make a difference. And let me give you the example. There are two countries which dominate the international construction industry. Number one, China. Number two, Turkey. In China, most of the construction companies are state-owned companies. Look at the profile of the companies involved in the CPEC projects in Pakistan. They are most of them state-owned companies underwritten by the Exim Bank of China. Now, if they want, in the early harvest projects which were carried out in the power production in Pakistan, most of the funding was provided by the Exim Bank. Whether it was investment or it was financing, it was Turkey Exim Bank. Once a group has financing, it can win markets. In Turkey, we have now their own domestic groups, over 200 groups, which are doing major infrastructure works, even in countries like in Russia. What to talk about, the Balkans and what Turks consider their backyard. So this is important. For example, let me give you an example. The new Istanbul airport, which was supposed to be the largest in the world, was built on BOT basis by a Turkish group of companies on about 20 billion euros worth on BOT basis. The government didn't put in any money, maybe a little bit of, in kind, but they are big groups which can raise money from, commercial banks. They can, from any financial institutions. So they get expensive loans. They can do projects on BOT basis, then make their own money from those projects. For example, if you land in the new international airport in Istanbul, you'll find a burger which costs you outside $5, maybe $20 inside. So where are those $15 going? To these companies, So they earn money from aviation revenue and non-aviation revenue. So we need to think like that, where your big companies can create a footprint and do such projects. And one example which comes into mind is FWO. FWO today makes outstanding motorways and highways. If you have 4 or 5 or 6 companies of that stature, the countries like the African countries would love it. If they bring financing, and do things on BOT where the governments don't have to cough out money, and then they make their own return. They take a concession on the project for 20 years, 15 years, and they are good. We have some good examples in Pakistan too. We have, for example, Nadra. We have, for example, Safe City project. The Safe City project in, for example, Lahore, the Chinese Consul General admitted that the Safe City project in Lahore is more modern than Safe City project in Beijing. It is using their technology, the Huawei things, but these are projects which are working. They are working very well. Nadra is working very well. Safe City project is working very well. FWO is making international standard motorways and highways. And you are IT and IT-based services. I think we need to create a space for these groups in Africa. Then there is the softer side. The softer side is that give more scholarships, give more trainings, be it military, be it civil, be it diplomatic service, be it banking, railways, whatever. In old days, when we were in the university and in college, I did my master's from Punjab University, there was a full hostel. Number 2 was all foreigners. There were a whole lot of foreigners from Africa and Far East. They used to come and study here. I don't know if we have that thing anymore, but we need to do this softer encouragement by offering more scholarships. Then we have a very active multilateral diplomacy in New York, in Geneva, elsewhere in OIC in Jeddah. I think we need to collaborate more closely. 54 countries of African group are make or break group. If they put their support behind you, you are through. If they stand against you, then you are done. So it is a important. Africa is a very important bloc. I would also say that Chinese have a growing footprint in Africa. In every country, they carry out first welfare projects for free, and then they create a niche. So the Chinese are very close to Pakistan. We have a strategic partnership with China, with CPEC going. I think we can also see study areas where we can team up with the Chinese. Taking joint ventures. We cannot compete Chinese. We can only be partners with the Chinese. Also, I think the tourism potential of Pakistan is something that we need to first go at a breakneck speed within the country to create the infrastructure, to create the facilities, and then perhaps also make this into a big industry. There are countries which have stunning figures from tourism revenue. I think Turkey earns far more from tourism alone that we earn from our entire exports. Our entire exports plus remittances are equal to Turkish tourism. So these are broad, I think, recommendations. I have not tried to classify some. Some can be, excuse me. Some can be carried out in short term, others can be carried out in medium term, and the others can be carried out in the longer term. I think it is always essential to have a plan, to have a perspective, to have a vision. And Africa is now ripe. Africa is now ripe with African Union playing a major part towards developmental side, moving away from decolonization and apartheid phase into development, and this new continent-wide framework of free trade, which I do not know, frankly, at what stage it is, but this exists at least in the framework today. So I thank you for the honor you have given me to speak. My exposure was limited, but it has helped me a lot to refresh my memory and to be in such distinguished company as the panel here, our dear friend Ambassador Tajammul, Ambassador Brar, Ambassador Saqib, and all the other colleagues in this very interesting think tank. And I thank you once again, and I'm open to any questions I'll try to answer. Thank you.
Sir, thank you so very much for your very lucid, comprehensive, insightful, and detailed briefing on West African countries with specific reference to Niger and Sierra Leone. And of course, in between, you also touched upon so graciously about your experiences in Turkey. that really has motivated me to float the idea that we would definitely love to have you with us again, having your experiences on not only Turkey but also United Nations mission that will add to a lot many other areas. And in one way or the other, when you were talking about your experiences in Turkey, I was correlating them how we can take them further to replicate some of the best practices, taking lead from Turkey and other countries in our experiences, and creating a footprint with the African countries. I also gratefully acknowledge the presence of Dr. Brigadier Tughril Yamin Sab, who is a very close associate of IPS. He is also having a great experience in UN peacekeeping in Africa. I can also recognize the presence of our chairman Khalid Rahman Sab on Zoom and few others as well. Now I would like to open the House for questions and answers or observation remarks by the distinguished participants. And then, of course, we will bring the session to an end. Thank you so very much. So, there is also a research student from Sierra Leone. I open the discussion first for those who are present on the Zoom. जी नजमुल साकिब साहब, welcome.
अनम्यूट करना पड़ेगा
सर, प्लीज अनम्यूट कर लें.
एम्बेसडर नजमुल साकिब साहब अनम्यूट कर लीजिए.
अपने आप को कि इसको, ये जो स्क्रीन पे था.
जी अब आ रही है आवाज आपकी.
अच्छा, ठीक है. So I actually enjoyed the wonderful expose about the Western Africa. Harun Shaukat Saab is a great speaker. We all know that. Maybe the participants or the other members of this Zoom meeting, they didn't know, but we are fully aware of Harun Saab's faculties. I have no questions about this because it was so comprehensive, although the ambassador said that he had a very little exposure to the Western Africa, particularly the recommendations that he has made. I could sense the passion also behind those words and phrases. I fully agree with Ambassador Harun Shaukat that we need to, there are ways to look at Africa, and one of the ways is to how much can you give to these countries to make your footprints there visible. And he has some sane suggestions. I sincerely hope that somebody there in your IPS is taking notes, and we would like it to be jotted down somewhere. And of course, I agree with you that we might be able to, in future, we might be able to listen to him about his experience as an astute diplomat at the UN or as the ambassador of Pakistan to Turkey. All kudos, all praise for Ambassador Harun Shaukat, and a job very well done by IPS. Thank you, sir.
Can I thank Ambassador Najmul Saqib for his very kind words. It is a great joy to see you on screen after a long time. When they said unmute yourself, so I was going to say he cannot be unmuted because you are a prolific writer. You are a prolific writer, book after book, article after article. I keep a track on your work in AFA, and we've not met now for a long time, but you are one of the source of wisdom and one of the great intellects in the Foreign Office framework. I thank you once again for your very kind.
God bless you.
I can see Farzana Yaqub Sahiba from Center for Asian African Studies, if she can also add some of her comments or any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Abrar Sahab, and excellent. Hats off to Kulsum. She has been curating very important discussions about Africa, and His Excellency Harun Sahab pointed out to some extremely important points that we have within IPS been discussing why we need to reach out not just to Europe or the northern hemisphere of the globe, but the southern hemisphere of the globe is extremely important as well. And Africa should not be seen as a huge mass which has just one identity, but every country has a separate identity and culture. And respecting that, how can we connect with them, particularly when it comes to the business sector? So very important remarks, and yes, the notes are taken by IPS. All the work that is done, as you know, that this discussion as well is being recorded, and we look forward, as always, to work with the Foreign Office, the people who are currently over there taking care of the Africa desk have been extremely engaging as well. And this is the first time. I must give credit to the government that there is an actual interest when it comes to the continent of Africa. Now, how that is then expressed in actions is something that we need to see. But the fact that the conversations are not just within amongst us, but we're also engaging former ambassadors, that just shows that we are moving forward. And the hope and the aspiration is that we will have more conversations. We will not only find solutions while we're talking, but we will also find solutions that can be acted upon, if not by the government, then for sure by the private sector, because at the end of the day, emerging market, and for Pakistani business people, the best market which does not have a lot of trade barriers happens to be Africa. And not much competition. There is so much that we can give and take. So I really hope that we can benefit from Africa, all the countries in Africa, and Kashmir being one of the pain points. I am a Kashmiri. I head the Kashmir working group in IPS. So yes, we have tried our best to convey to the Foreign Office and to the government of Pakistan that we must engage Africa, not just as separate countries, but as a UN bloc. And for sure, the size does not matter, because in UN, every vote counts. It is equal. So thank you so much to everyone who organized, and thank you so much, sir, Sahab and Najmul Saqib Sahab. We learn a lot from you, and we seek your guidance in improving our work. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Farzana Yaqub, for your very generous remarks. That also sets the tone for us to go ahead. I can also see on Zoom Michael Tucker from Sierra Leone, if he wants to ask some question or any comments or observations. Over to unmute.
Yes, Michael, we can't hear you. No, we can't hear you. Is your mic open?
I think there is some connectivity problems. Before going to Ambassador Abrar Hussain sir for his concluding remarks, I think I should also be asking those who are present in the hall if they have any question or observation. Welcome.
So I have a small question. You have listed the countries in West Africa which are former French colonies. And we believe that still France exercises a lot of control on them. And from Africa, in the last program, we heard from Ambassador Saqib that more than $500 billion of annual revenue of France is generated in Africa or through Africa. So how can we understand this phenomena, and how important is our relations with France to have good trade relations with these countries, which are former French colonies and still under considerable control of French policies?
Well, our relation with the Francophone Africa has to be taken on its own. I don't think that there is any route that goes through Paris unless there is something very specific. I do know that France has a very strong hold on Francophone African countries. They had a different methodology of colonization. The British mastered the art of divide and rule. They dominated these countries through administrative units. The French went under your skin, you know. They culturally colonized their colonies. In all Francophone Africa, you will see that they have even changed the dietary habits of these people. They eat the French-style baguette. And the other day, I met with a colleague who was with me in Niger, and he said in Niger, even the beggars speak in French, you know. So the cultural domination of France, and France has a very extensive program, always. You know, I went to school in Paris in what is called Institut d'Administration Publique. It was an ancient colonial school. It was supposed to be for administrators from the former colonies. I think all countries, from all the colonizer countries, the French had a way of really culturally colonizing. If you visit the Maghreb countries like Tunisia, the tree lines that are cut like a hedge are the ones you see in Paris, you know. So they even, you know, go to that extent. But I think the French influence is surely there. They also assist and they also take. For example, bulk of Niger's uranium goes to France. They have a long-term sort of license. At least they had that when I was there. That was a long time ago. The French influence is this economic union in ECOWAS area. The franc CFA is a French franc. It's a franc for the African countries. 15 countries using a single currency. But I don't think that there's a link to how much close we are to France. You know, if we have to build roads and inroads in Francophone Africa, we can do it very well without going through Paris. I don't think there's a link. Thank you.
Mr. Ambassador, thank you very much for giving us the insight. My name is Ikramul Haq. I'm IPS associate, sir. My question related to your recommendation, one of the recommendation that you put is MNCs, the role of MNCs. That is really important. Now here, I want to know, is there a practicality or is there a possibility all our ambassadors who have worked in different parts of the world, especially in Africa, they can build a bridge or they can help the industries, chambers and commerce of all the states or the respective states where you people have worked, and with your knowledge, these industries and chambers and commerce can build a bridge. Because you see, there are gaps and disconnects. At the time, all the industries, chambers and commerce do not find a ways and means to get connected. So with the knowledge like yours and with the knowledge of other people who have a respective country, that can help bridge a gap, a knowledge bridge, and with which they will be able to find the right market for the right product at the right time. Thank you, sir.
Kramsam, thank you for your question. You know, the question of MNCs is not that much of a question of finding opportunities. It's a question of capacity. I served in the Punjab Investment Board for some years, and there was one phenomena which was very striking. You have companies and groups which are happy to become stagnant at $100 million worth or $200 million worth. Nobody is keen to become a unicorn, the billion plus company. If you look at the Pakistani private sector, you have a beautiful, very good group called Pakistan Business Council. Pakistan Business Council, Karachi-based Business Council, it groups about 70, 80 major industrial players, producers in Pakistan. Very few are Pakistanis. You can count them. But if they are sector specific, the sector which thrives most is construction. China is made like that. This whole Belt and Road Initiative hinges on that. CPEC hinges on that. The Turks are made like that. We have groups which you can count. You can count about 10, 12 groups, and then you will say the rest are very small. So you need people who have capacity to go out and invest, who have a reputation in the international market to raise funds from commercial banks, from lending institutions, not banking on Pakistan. If FAO gets a project, let's say in Niger, and they can finance it through Banque Nationale de Paris or something, if they have good relations with them, government of Pakistan will have no liability. So this is what is happening. The question here is more fundamental. Why is there no desire for Pakistani groups to grow beyond 100 million, 200 million? You can count about 200 companies in Pakistan which are in that bracket, but they're happy. They don't want to grow bigger. I think it is not a question of linkages, it's a question of capacity. Thank you, sir.
Hello. Assalamu alaikum.
Yes, Michael, we can hear you now.
Okay. I'm so happy I'm part of this meeting now because my laptop is giving me some problems, but I have connected to my phone. And I want to, first of all, thank the Honorable Ambassador for giving such a very, very brilliant presentation, which was like everything I was thinking about, because even the last meeting I was at, I came up with the same issue about Pakistan, because at the end of the day, like for me, although I was a small boy in Sierra Leone, I'm a Sierra Leonean, but I came to know that Pakistan did a lot to end our war, because just like he said, the Indians were tired, they back out at the end of the day, Pakistan came in and took up everything. And at the end of the day, just like he said, they used the diplomatic means to solve our brutal civil war, just like he was saying. It was very, very brutal. Although some of us were fortunate, we were staying in areas where we were, like for me, I was not even able to see a single rebel throughout that 11 years. Yeah. But at the end of the day, Pakistan was able to step in and salvage the situation. Yeah, I don't have no question. I just want to tell Honorable Ambassador that I'm doing my research on Pakistan relation with Sierra Leone, and I don't know if I'll be able to meet him personally or get a contact of him so that I would interview him to gain more knowledge, especially in this light, sir. That is my own contribution for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael, for your very kind words. By all means, I'm a free man. I'm available. I'll be very happy to interact with you. I have very fond memories of my stay in Sierra Leone, and we work very closely with the international partners for the governance and stabilization program. There was a gentleman called Alan Doss from the United Kingdom, who was the UNDP res rep. He was the resident coordinator. He was the liaison for the governance and stabilization program, and I was part of his team. And I have seen Sierra Leone many parts very closely, and I wish you people a great deal of good luck. It's a beautiful country. Freetown is a very beautiful city. Your barracuda fish and your lobsters and such great seafood. I'll be very happy, and I'll be very much available for anything that I can be of help to you. Thank you, Michael, once again.
My question is about China's engagement and African region, as we have already seen a lot of Chinese engagement in African region, but with hardly three embassies are in West Africa, how Pakistan is going to exploit economic opportunities in West Africa? That's all.
Sir, I have a question related to Maimuna's question. It is that while we're discussing Pakistan's challenges and recommendations for developing relations with Western African countries, how do you see the potential of these countries growing economically, politically in the world, let's say in next 10 years, and that we should eye at and we should focus on and hence develop Pakistan's relations with these countries?
These questions are for me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You were looking on one side. I thought, I do not know, you're looking at somebody else. Anyway, first of all, the Chinese footprint. The Chinese are going to overtake United States in their GDP soon, and they are hungry for raw materials. They're hungry for energy. They're hungry for raw materials. They're hungry for new markets. They have almost exhausted their export-led growth model. Now they are this Belt Road Initiative is kind of reaching out program in which they're stepping out of China. It is not that the Chinese are present in Pakistan today. They know who's who in Pakistan. And many of these companies are also present in Africa. Now, it is only the task of major groups to partner with. No small group can create a partnership with a state-backed large group. First of all, the state-backed companies of China, they do not like partnerships. But there is a very wide range of private entrepreneurs in China now. And they are big time in their own right. Participating, it is the dynamic of the private sector to get connected. For example, there was a Chinese group called Challenge Apparel here. It came from Shanghai or some such region, big time producers. And we could not offer them land. Their chairman was here personally, and then they ended up dealing with private sector. That is how the partnerships can possibly be built. Of course, it's not very simple. The other question, I'm sorry, I'm not clear what you asked, Kalsoom.
Yes, sir.
I think the answer, if I'm allowed to say a few words, the answer to those questions, those two questions, I think Ambassador Harun Shaukat did touch upon those things, that there are some financial constraints That's why we don't have many embassies in these areas, especially in the Western countries. It is important to know that it is not up to the Foreign Office to open an embassy anywhere it wants. In fact, if you see the last 15 years, we have not been able to open certain embassies. For instance, I know that we have to have an embassy in Chile. The embassy was opened and then closed. So there are certain economic factors which are restricting the Foreign Office not to open, as many embassies as it wants. Secondly, the same point as touched upon by Ambassador Harun Shaukat was that you have to see Africa from a different angle. It's high time that we thought that Africa is actually important. For instance, if you ask any businessman in Pakistan, ask him where does he want to do business, his first priority will be Europe, North America, Canada, America, Sweden, Norway, Denmark. Have you ever heard, any businessman saying that he would like to go to Sierra Leone and start a business? So there are two, pronged things which need to be addressed. One is from the government, which Ambassador Harun Shaukat touched upon. The other is from the private sector. They need to be cognizant of the fact that Africa is offering a lot. The only thing is that either saying that there is no visa problems and the hotel problems and there is no 5-star hotel there. So it needs to be touched upon from both sectors, the government sector and the private sector. But as far as Foreign Office is concerned, there are summaries, there are files which are full of these, praise for the, the whole Black continent.
Thank you, Najm. Thank you for your very good answer.
I think if there are no questions, I can ask Ambassador Abrar Hussain Sahab to give his concluding remarks, and then I will wind up the session. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me first of all thank Ambassador Harun Shaukat Sahab for a very enlightening and comprehensive talk. I personally have learned a lot, and I'm sure it was equally beneficial for all participants here. IPS keeps on holding such seminars and webinars, which not only add to our knowledge, but also help our researchers. We have been holding a series of such lectures on Africa. Our last speaker was Ambassador Najmul Saqib, as all of you know. All such efforts show our seriousness about Pakistan's relations with Africa, which is in fact our constitutional requirement as well. Let's hope our efforts will bear fruit and help our policy makers to make progress in improving our relations with Africa. Well, towards the end, let me once again express my gratitude to Ambassador Harun Shaukat for accepting our request and for participating in the seminar and delivering a very good talk. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I think that brings us to the conclusion of this session, and taking it as my pleasant obligation, I would also like to profusely thank Ambassador Harun Shaukat Sahib for his talk and also kind presence amongst us. I am genuinely sure that every one of us in this discussion, in this room and on Zoom, have enormously benefited from your enlightening talk. And thank you so very much for sparing your precious time for us. And we look forward to have more sessions with you in the future. Thank you, sir.